Hi everybody, Reverend Kelly here, and I am on my back screen porch on Shrove Tuesday afternoon, and I am getting ready to make some ashes to use for my personal practice, my home practice for Ash Wednesday. We're going to be having Ash Wednesday services tomorrow, but we're inviting people to make their own ashes at home. Part of the Ash Wednesday tradition is that we use ashes on our foreheads as a sign of our repentance, as a sign of our own mortality as we enter into the season of Lent. It's an ancient tradition. It actually goes back to a Jewish practice of using sackcloth and ashes as a sign of repentance, and it's how we start our Lenten journey each year. So I am here on my back porch. I'm outside because I'm going to be burning things and I want to make sure that I don't set off any fire alarms in my house. But I have some supplies here to help me do this. So I have a pen and some paper. I have a kitchen pot, a fork. I have some palms that were left over from last year, a little palm cross. If you have some, you can use those. We put some out on the porch at Holy Cross if you wanted to swing by and pick up some leftover palms from last year, or you can just use the paper. That's fine too. I have a little bit of olive oil here in a ramekin. That's going to come in handy later. I have a source for fire. And then I have a glass of water just in case something goes wrong with the fire. This is here for safety purposes. So we are going to start our practice of how we're going to make our ashes on this Shrove Tuesday, or you could even make them on Ash Wednesday afternoon, so you could use them at our 7 o'clock Ash Wednesday service. So a couple things I wanted to draw out about this idea of repentance. The Hebrew word for repentance means to turn away from, and the Greek word for repentance means to change your mind. So to turn away from or to change your mind. And there's many different metaphors for sin in the Bible, but the most commonly used one is actually a description of sin as weight. Sin is a burden that you are carrying around. So the first thing I'm going to invite you to do is to take your paper, take your pen, and I would maybe take your paper and tear it in half so you don't have quite so big a piece of paper. Tear your piece of paper in half. And then take your pen and spend a little bit of time writing down on your piece of paper what's something that you want to turn away from in this season of Lent. What is something that you want to change your mind about during this season of Lent? What is a weight that you have been carrying around that you would like to put down during this Lenten season? I invite you to take your paper, take a pen, maybe you've got crayons or some colored pencils, something like that, and you might want to draw whatever that is instead of writing it down. Feel free to take this exercise however you'd like, but just take a few minutes and think about what is something that you would like to offer before God during this season of Lent. Okay, so now that you have had a chance to write down some of the stuff that you want to set aside during this season of Lent, I invite you to take your piece of paper that you've written it down on and then twist it up a bit like this. One of the things about making ashes for Ash Wednesday is that it can be kind of hard to get ashes dark. And part of how you get ashes to be darker is you deprive them of oxygen. It's kind of like the process of making coals for a fire or making charcoal. They do that by depriving the charcoal of oxygen while they're burning it. So twisting your paper up like this helps that process, helps it burn a little bit slower, but also makes your ashes a little bit darker. So you've got your pot, where you can safely burn those ashes. And then I also have my palms here. And what I'm going to do is take my piece of paper where I have written these things down. I'm going to light it on fire. So here's my paper that is on fire, and I'm going to light it at both ends actually to help it burn a little bit more quickly. And we can see that now it's burning on both sides. And I'm going to put that in my pot. I'm also taking my palm and I'm going to light that as well. So here's my palm on fire. So now that my fire has gone out and I'm left with just these little ash remnants, and you can see there's a little bit of palm there and a little bit of palm there, I want to take a fork actually, and things have cooled down here, and I sort of want to take this fork and use it to break up the ashes. And this is a process that can take a little time because you really want to get those ashes down to a finer size. You might find something like that was hiding underneath there. You might go ahead and burn the rest of that palm if you discover something else that's in there. You got some bigger pieces of paper like this. You might want to burn those down smaller. But all in all, you want to sort of take those ashes and break them up into a smaller size. And then you'll see over here I have a little bit that I already did, and they break down to about that size. So I'm going to take these that I'm working on right now that have the bit of palm in them, and I'm going to pour them in my ramekin with the other stuff, with the other ashes. So now I am here and I have my ashes, as you can see there, and I've sort of, again, I've mixed them around a bit with the fork to break them up so that they are relatively fine. And then there's sort of one last step to this process. So as I take these ashes just as they are right now, you can see here I definitely have ashes on my finger, but when I go to smudge it on my hand, it's not very dark. So there's a couple of options for what you can do to make your ashes a little bit darker and make sure they'll adhere and they'll stick. So one thing you might do is, this is where the olive oil that I've got here comes in handy. You can pour a few drops of olive oil into your ashes and then mix that up together. And this can kind of take a little bit of time to find the right consistency if you want to do it this way. But once you get a little bit of olive oil in on the action, when you go to smear your ashes, they come out, as you can see, much darker with the olive oil mixed in. Or another way that you might do it is you could just take your finger and dip it in the olive oil first, and then dip it in the ashes. And here you can see like this. That also helps to make the ashes darker so that they can make a darker mark when you go to smear them on your forehead. So that is how, during this pandemic season, you might go about making your own ashes at home for your observance of Ash Wednesday. But I want to remind you that you can also observe all of the penitential markers of Ash Wednesday and this entrance into the season of Lent, even without ashes. Even if you choose not to do this exercise at home, you can still go through all of those prayers of repentance without making the ashes for these marks. The most important part, above all, above everything, is not whether or not you put these ashes on as a sign of your repentance, but whether or not you come to God with an open heart, willing to place before God honestly the things that are going on in your life, the things that you want to turn away from, the weight that you want to put down. If you bring those things honestly to God in prayer through our Ash Wednesday liturgy, then you have already given yourself the gift of a wonderful start to your Lenten season, and to opening your heart up to God's healing, God's forgiveness, God's transformation, and God's love. So Thank you so much for joining me for this brief Shrove Tuesday tutorial on how to make your own ashes at home. And remember, our worship tomorrow is at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and both of those services will be found on Holy Cross's Facebook page. Thanks so much and take care. Bye-bye.